Right, so greetings, hello, and welcome to the Philosophy Club here in Gaul, middle of France, Bettet. It's that time of week, Sunday evening, and welcome. Nice to see old friends here and online. So it's been quite a week, hasn't it? Today we're recording this on the September the, what is it, 27th or 28th?
28th.
It's 28th. Yeah, can't keep track of the time. Every time you look, it's another day gone past.
Time flies when you're fun.
Yeah. Anyway, 28th of September. We're coming up to Michaelmas in the Christian calendar, Day of St. Michael. And it's an important day, also in the anthroposophical community, which I've been involved with for many years. Used to serve as librarian in their headquarters in London. So that's an important time. But it's also a very important time of the year for me because it's the United Nations General Assembly meets in New York, where I've been. I've visited the UN headquarters several times. I've spoken there about the role of universities in peace making. And I love the UN, and so I always like listening into the speeches by world leaders at this time of year. They're all on YouTube, or the UN has its own channel. It's a way of tapping into the global Geist, as it were. And I like to evaluate the quality of different speeches by different politicians. And it takes, quite a while to get through them all because each is allowed 15 minutes and there's about 190 speeches. So I haven't finished yet. It's an ongoing project. I've got mostly through the first day. And I've heard some brilliant speeches I just want to summarise if you haven't had a chance yourself. I heard the Lithuanian president speaking. Brilliant, very good intellectual, about the problems of Russia's aggression against Ukraine, and they're right on the firing line. They're feeling as a Baltic state that, this is really a bridge too far. So he was very, very brilliant in his takedown of Putinism. I heard the Portuguese president who spoke brilliantly about Gaza being a Mediterranean country. They're more incensed about the Gaza war. And he was pledging Portugal's assistance to the fleet. I think he said he's going to send a warship. And that really, enough is enough. This Gaza slaughter should stop. Portugal is absolutely incensed about the whole thing. And he spoke brilliantly about that. I also heard other speeches by, let me see, yes, a lot of the Central Asian powers. That was very interesting. The president of Kazakhstan spoke, which is where there's a huge tower dedicated to interfaith peace building. And I've always wanted to go there and organise a meeting, so he's going to get a letter from me suggesting that, because he's saying that they want this Palace of Peace and Reconciliation in Astana, the capital city, to be used and to be a focus for peacemaking for the world. Based on the old Silk Road, which was an interfaith paradise, Buddhists, Manichaeans, Christians, Nestorians, Muslims, Sufis, they all used to go up and down the Silk Road through Kazakhstan. And he's sort of revived that. He's proud of that heritage as a Central Asian power. He says, the world's gone mad with all this religious nonsense. Look, come to Kazakhstan, let's do peacemaking. So I'm going to say, okay, right, you're on. I set up the multi-faith mediation service exactly for that. So that was great to hear him say that. I heard the president of Slovenia speak, a woman who is brilliant. I love Slovenia. They're such clever and amazing and moral people. And she was against both the Putin nonsense attacking Ukraine, but also against Gaza and the Netanyahu nonsense attacking them. And she was saying we need a UN global forum for the future. Here, I want to set it up, she said. So I'm writing to her saying, okay, well, look, I run the World Intellectual Forum. you can have it. We'll work together on this. We have a Slovenian coordinator for that, Marco Kren. And don't reinvent the wheel. Let's work on turning the World Intellectual Forum into a global forum for the future. But the point I made in the letter, which is already nearly ready, that we need to be concerned not just with the future, but with the present, and also with the past. There's a lot of futurism going on, but if we neglect the present and the past, we're screwed as a planet. So the World Intellectual Forum is concerned with is how the present will affect the future. It's the choices we make in the present that will steer whether we even have a future as a planet. And it's our interpretation of the past that determines how we act in the present. People get stuck in narratives, historical narratives, like Netanyahu. All Muslims are evil. All Christians are wimps. We're God's chosen people. We have the right to bomb anyone we want because we've got God and America on our side. That's his historical narrative. That then shapes what he does in the present, which then destroys the future for Iran, Palestine, Lebanon, Syria. Take your pick. He's out to get them all, it seems. So I think, anyway, so that's my response to the Slovenian president. The South African president spoke brilliantly, of course, about their ongoing attempt to get the UN legal system to do something about Netanyahu and his genocide. I heard the British Foreign Secretary speak, who spoke actually quite well about Gaza and Britain's had enough. And, we've recognised Palestine, and she announced that. We already knew, Keir Starmer said it from Number 10, but she confirmed, yeah, we recognise Palestine. The thing is, of course, it's a bit late, isn't it? We should have done this in 1988 when most other civilised countries did it. And along with recognising should come some action. So I'd like to see a couple of British warships accompanying the flotilla. There are British people on board those ships, and we should defend them if anyone tries to take them out. Put some teeth behind this recognition, because there's aid going in desperately needed. And I'd like to see, a proper naval force going in with huge amounts of aid to Gaza. And not like once Netanyahu agrees, but no, immediately demand it, do it, and let Israel then attack that fleet, and then they're in trouble. So I heard the Mongolian president speak. He was brilliant. Talk about looking at history. I mean, most nations look on the Mongolian Empire as a bit of a no-no, a bit of a disaster. They sacked Baghdad, they slaughtered all the Sufis and Muslims, they burned the city, destroyed the libraries. They used to raise a city and then pile up all the skulls of the people they killed outside of the warning. I mean, Mongolia doesn't have a good rep. But he said, hey, best thing ever was the Pax Mongolica, when the Mongols ruled most of the world and we brought peace and justice to everyone. We had a legal system, we had roads, and the Pax Mongolia was really a great thing. Okay, well, we might want to argue against that. But what he did say is they love horses, and also women. He was proud of Mongolia's treatment of women. He's organising all kinds of women-only conferences, and he wants to raise the rights of the horse to some kind of great status. So that fits with my friend Inga Mette from Norway, who wants this Pax Equus to be a thing that horses are used for peacemaking, as they were in the symbolic ride up the Seine during the Olympic opening ceremony. So I'm sure the Mongolians would love a meeting with the International Delphic Academy and the look at the horse as a peace tool instead of a war tool. And he's having a World Woman Forum this year. So that was very interesting. Then I heard from the President of Turkmenistan, who announced an International Day of Mediation. He wants the UN to up mediation as a thing, and of course as a mediator, absolutely 100% behind you, sir. Well done, Turkmenistan. And also he wants an international year of peace and trust. He wants to put trust on the UN Assembly, things that it does, and he announced he wants to devise an international code of trust, because in the position of Turkmenistan, there's not enough trust in the world. Nations don't trust each other, even within nations. And that's interesting to me as a philosopher, how can we get more trust in the world? I think that's really, really important. So I support that, and I'm going to be writing to him with that. So anyway, that's just a few. I've listened to Macron, the French president, who I think spoke very well, although there's a slightly frenetic air to Macron. It's like as if he is single-handed saving the world, and he's got to do everything all at once, himself personally, and it's a bit of a burden on him. Come on, Emmanuel, you can share the burden. I mean, I have written to you several times and offered stuff, and I still haven't, well, I had a reply a while back.
Yes, a bit rash.
But, you don't have to do everything alone. You've got other people who will help. We love you, but, share that burden a bit. Delegate. But otherwise it was a brilliant speech. The president of Lebanon spoke beautifully in perfect Arabic, and of course listening to the languages is so fascinating, and there's always translations. He was saying, look, hey, we believe in peace, love, multiculturalism, interfaith harmony. We're Lebanon, for God's sake. And I really 100% support Lebanon. I have Lebanese friends. And they are the old Phoenicia, which is where philosophy was partly born. We know that Christ himself had students in Tyre and Sidon in the Gospels. He goes there. Phoenicia was very important in the Christian origin story and in the ancient wisdom story. So thank you, Lebanon. Keep going. And I'll report back on others when I hear them, but that's just a little sample. And I strongly recommend people to find time to listen to all this stuff, because it's absolutely fascinating. I didn't yet hear Norway. I haven't heard Russia yet. Oh, and I heard America. I heard Trump. I mean, good Lord. Crazy, crazy, crazy stuff. I mean, I did ask, AI if what do fact checkers think about his speech, and 80% of it is nonsense and lies, apparently, by like official agencies, press agencies and stuff. He sort of makes up stuff, and it has it creates this sort of bubble of I'm the great Trump solving all the world's problems single-handedly, and you didn't even know there were problems, like the green racket. The whole global warming thing, that whole thing is a racket, and I, Trump, am going to take it down. I mean, he doesn't have the respect, I'm sorry to say, of myself as rector of the Global Green University. I think he hasn't done his homework, and most of the reputable ecologists and scientists around the planet would disagree profoundly with Trump. It seems he's a spokesman for the oil lobby and the oil industry, and I have a book called Green Backlash. I mean, there were deliberate attempts to destroy the green movement by big corporate interests connected to oil. And he's just, a placement for them, it seems to me. But I don't agree with his cavalier approach to facts. But it's interesting to watch and listen to, because it tells us more about his bombastic, approach to truth making, which is to invert truth and then tell lies. I also heard the president of Colombia, who really did a very important takedown of Trump, and complained that he's now attacking his youngsters in boats off the coast. And Colombian president is not happy with Trump, and also not happy with Netanyahu or Putin. And he did say the General Assembly should make a vote on an intervention in Gaza, since the Security Council has refused to do that because Trump vetoed it. Well, the General Assembly has the authority and power to do that vote. If the Security Council fails to intervene in a situation of genocide, the UN General Assembly should step up. And this Colombian president, who's a real intellectual actually, he said, well, let's do it. Let's have a vote, during his 15 minutes. I don't know the protocol of how you go about that, he could presumably pull some strings and try and get that put to the General Assembly as a motion. What I did notice is that Trump has immediately revoked his visa. So presumably ICE are going to come and arrest him and export him back to Colombia. So for daring to make that suggestion, he's now about to be... I just hope he stays in the UN headquarters building, because I believe that is diplomatic immunity. I don't think he should go out and sample the nightlife. Stay in the building, sir, and get that vote on the floor of the General Assembly, would be my advice. Because Trump obviously is advised by really cutthroat, Nazi-type people that just, go for the jugular. So you have to fight back and be clever. But so watching all that, very interesting. And also I just want to say, just to shout out for the amazing woman president, who is German, and who is, I think her name is Lena Baerbock, and she's green, which won't please Trump, but she was elected as the president of the UN General Assembly, and she's supervising the whole thing. Highly intellectual, very clever woman. She reminds me of Petra Kelly, who inspired me when I was a youth getting involved in green stuff. And she's brilliant, and well done, for getting elected. And I will also be writing to her about some matters to do with what the UN could do more. And I believe she's intelligent enough to actually clock it. So that's very exciting. Meanwhile, any comments on that? Did you listen to any of it so far?
Well,
did you hear the Norwegian president?
no, I haven't heard the prime minister speech. Also,
because you have a king, no, you don't have a president.
we have
You have a king and a prime minister like Britain.
Yeah. But the world's first female prime minister. She also led WHO, World Health Organization, for a number of years.
Brundtland.
Mrs. Brundtland.
She spoke the previous day.
She did.
Did you hear that?
No.
I listened to that. She was at a special meeting convened by France and Saudi Arabia on the peace deal for Palestine and Gaza, and she spoke very well about that. And about the women. There was another conference about women, and she spoke in that, and she was brilliant.
Yeah. She's 84
A youngster.
or 86.
My mum died at the age of 98, and she was carrying on with her activism till like the last 6 months of her life, organising meetings, writing letters. I mean, 98, it's incredible. Okay, so moving on. Meanwhile, another part of the forest. I love talking books, so whilst I'm working and writing letters and stuff, I like to have a talking book going. And I'm listening now to The Golden Bough by Sir James Fraser, who was one of the great anthropologists of Scottish and British history, 20th century, who was from Helensburgh, near where I lived at the Castle of the Muses in Argyll. And I've never had time to read the whole thing, because it's 12 vast volumes of, millions of words. He synthesized it down to a 900-page volume, which is available as a talking book. So I'm listening to that one. I want the whole 12 volumes because that's got all the footnotes, the details. So if anyone's got a spare set of Fraser's 12-volume edition, please give me a shout out and we can arrange to have it shipped here. But what's so interesting, I remember discovering Fraser when I was a boy. I think it was about 11 or 10, because a friend of my mother's had a copy of it, and we visited her house in Hampstead, and I saw it on the shelf, flicked it open. It had describing different types of magic. He defined what is homeopathic magic, what is sympathetic magic, what is contagious magic. And I thought, this is really interesting. Well, here's a guy writing scientifically about what magic is, based on his study of all-world tribal customs and rituals. And I remember borrowing it. I was only a precocious 11-year-old. But I never fully read it. Obviously, an 11-year-old can't cope with a book that size very much. So now I'm finally reading the whole thing, and it's absolutely fascinating. And this business about magic is very interesting, because what counts as magic? So, according to Fraser, a branch of sympathetic magic is homeopathic magic. So like creates like. So if I'm a magician and I want it to rain, I will sprinkle bits of my coffee around the room, like making water drops. And then I'll do a prayer, say an incantation, and then the next day it's going to rain. If I want to harm or damage somebody, I'll make a little image of them, and I'll stick pins in it or I'll burn it, and it'll damage them. Now that's the principle of homeopathic magic. I can do love magic. If I fall in love with somebody and I want them to love me back, so I can make a little doll and cuddle and stroke her and all that stuff, and then it'll work. And this sort of thing has been done, according to his discoveries and his research, by every single tribe known to humanity. All humanity's been at this game since we've started our journey towards Homo sapiens sapiens. And it was occurring to me as I was listening, the other thing is that he says that in China, the Feng Shui magicians, it's all based on homeopathic magic, because if your city is a shape of a particular thing, let's say it's a bird, and it looks like a partridge, the shape of the actual city, that's a problem, because if the neighbouring city looks like an eagle shape, then you're going to be defeated. So what they used to do is they would change the shape of the city walls so that they didn't look like a thing that was going to be defeated. And this became a high art in Chinese civilization for 2,000 years, and that's called Feng Shui, or it's one of the most important branches, like defensive magic against the other guys. And then I was thinking, well, hang on, isn't this the whole basis of astrology? Because the sign up there that is Taurus looks like a bull. So everyone born in that sign is going to be bull-like. I mean, that is Fraser's idea of sympathetic magic. It's this way of thinking through analogies, that because something looks like something, so its qualities will be transferred to me. And as a magician, I can then work with that, and somehow I can counter that, or I can, amplify it. So all I'm saying here, I haven't finished it. It's a work in progress. This is going to take a month, I think, to finish this book. But I'm really engrossed and fascinated. Ron Hutton uses it in his study of witchcraft and magic in his academic studies. He influenced many pagan thinkers in the 20th century, like Patricia Crowther, who's just died, famous Wiccan woman, who was a friend of friends of mine, and Robert Graves and other commentators on the history of magic have, they've all read their Fraser. And I apologise, I'm coming to it late. I mean, for God's sake, I should have read this when I was 11. And the core idea, of course, is that he was inspired by the rites of Diana at Aricia, a temple just south of Rome, where the king of the wood, who was like the ritual temple priest of that grove, the only way he could be unseated was as if somebody else came along and killed him. And they had the right to do that, if and only if they got a bough off the tree that he was defending. So he grabs the golden bough, as it was called, and then can kill the guy, and then he becomes, in turn, the priest of the wood, the king. So, what Fraser's doing is trying to understand what is that ritual, why? Why do people do that? Because it involves murder, it involves challenging authority. And it occurs to me that it's pretty essential in human nature. We like to challenge people. Every boy wants to challenge their teacher and prove that they're brighter. I've had thousands of kids over the years when I'm a teacher saying, "No, you're wrong, sir, I know the truth," and get really angry about it. And I even had death threats when I was a full teacher, because, you want to kill the teacher, right, and prove you're best, and then you become the teacher in turn. So I think that's kind of, I think Fraser's onto something here, is that rivalry between generations and experts is very deep in human nature. That's Netanyahu can't stand Muslims being around because they're kind of rival. They have different opinions, so he has to kill them all. And they in turn can't stand him and Israel because they're the rivals, so they've got to blow them up. So, and Ukraine and Russia, they're both rivals. They can't stand each other, so they're trying to do this, enact this right of the who's the king of the wood, you know. If that's true, and I'm reading this book as a peace scholar, then how do we unpick all that? If it's so deep in our psychology, ever since Neanderthals, this fight, conquer, get the woman, you know, kind of thing. Well, that's what I'm working on, and I'll let you know when I get the answers. But that's the questions. Another book I want to share that I'm reading, because I have like 3 books on the go at any one time, for different times of day. I'm reading a very important book by the head of the FBI Counterintelligence Service in the USA for a couple of decades, in fact. And his name is Peter, I can't pronounce it, but it's Strzok, Strzok, obviously East European, probably Polish. Peter Strzok has written this amazing study called Compromised. He was head of counterintelligence specifically against Russia in the States for several decades. And he personally supervised the FBI at taking out Russian spies, you know, taking them to court, exposing what they were doing. And the book explains there are in Russian intelligence circles, there are things called illegals, whereby Russian, in the old days of the KGB, it's now doing the same thing, plants people for a 30-year timeline. So they'll plant somebody in Norway or Britain or America with a made-up CV. And there's 2 particular ones first few chapters are about. They were supposed to be Canadians. They had names, passports, they had a house, children, a couple, but actually they were Russian spies groomed since late adolescence to adopt these persona. They then go into Canada using fake names, fake passports, adopt the lifestyle of 2 Canadians, speak fluently, but once they come up live, they're transmitting coded messages once a week back to the mothership, you know, I don't know, the Russian embassy in Berlin or back to Moscow. And it was up to Peter and his colleagues to find them and then to prove it, to get enough evidence of what they were doing. Had to break into their house, break into a safety deposit box in a bank where they'd stored stuff. I mean, it's fascinating, the amount, and that's just 2 illegals, as they're called. And Russia's doing this a lot, and has been doing for the last 30, 40 years, you know, ever since the revolution, actually. But it hasn't stopped. The point Peter makes is that we all thought, when I went to Moscow in 1990, coordinator of Philosophers of Peace, we all thought, thank God the Cold War is over, we can live in peace. But so we let down our guard in the West, in America, in Britain, in Scandinavia, in France. They didn't. They carried on with their program, same as. They're still running these same illegals, you know. So I'm learning huge amounts from this book, and I recommend it to everybody if you want to know what's going on and why Putin thought he could, you know, just carry on. I mean, Trump is effectively, we know this, and the thing that I'm looking forward to in the later chapters is this guy, Peter, was part of an FBI attempt to nail Trump. And Trump turned on him with all his venom and called him crude names. And Peter resigned from the FBI over it, as I'm going to learn later in the book. But he wrote this book just to signal to the American people and the world, look, hey, this guy's dangerous. Trump actually is a Russian asset, and he proves it, you know, in detail. So, I'll report on that when I finish the book. Have there been any cases in Norway of these Russian illegals?
Yeah, we had a case a couple of years back. A Brazilian. professor. I
Right.
guess got into University of Tromsø and University of Svalbard as well, I guess.
Right.
Uh,
But he was actually a Russian
he was
asset.
a Russian asset. They picked him up. They managed to grab him.
Right. And could prove it and all that.
Yeah.
Was he kicked out or was he imprisoned or what?
I wonder if he was a part of a prisoner exchange, one of those Ukraine
Yeah.
things, and so
Right. Yes. So I mean,
he wasn't popular when he came back to Russia, apparently.
no. I mean the thing. I mean I think it's all wrong. Obviously, as a philosopher and intellectual, I don't want academics to be also spies. And I think that I'm a spy for the kingdom of God. I think that's enough. I'm trying to build humanity as peaceful, loving community of nations. Kingdom of God is not yet fully with us, so I'm an intelligence agent working for them. A country not yet born. But I wouldn't be a spy for any of the existing countries because they're all fallible, they're all armed to the teeth, and I believe I have more freedom as a roving intellectual for the kingdom of God than if I was an intelligence agent. And I don't think academics should ever take the king's shilling and become spies. I mean, and I don't think Russia should be still playing these games. It's child stuff.
And
It's dangerous.
You know where Putin comes from.
Well, that's the whole problem. He was an agent.
So you already had the network working for him. So why close it down if it worked then? He says it's going to work in the future.
Yeah, but I just don't agree with all that stuff. As a philosopher, I think it's wrong. I mean,
Most people
if
don't.
Kant was also an intelligence agent working for the Prussian government, we wouldn't read his stuff. If Plato was an intelligence agent for the Athenian government, he wouldn't be that important. I think we have to be above these petty so-called pseudo-intelligence things. And I've discovered that in France they don't call this stuff intelligence. They call it the secret services. There's no intelligence in all this stuff. And I think Putin and I don't think you should be a head of state if you've been an intelligence agent. That I think should be a rule. I mean, if I was talking at the UN headquarters, I'd say let's have a code of ethics. You don't get to be on this platform if you've been a military intelligence guy. Anyway, moving on. Talking of the devil, I've been rewriting some of my recent history I'm working on an autobiography, which I do every now and then, and I've got quite a lot to catch up with because the last volume finished in 2017. Now I'm writing my life story, and I do it as I go along. From 2018 to now, 2025, the death of my daughter, that'll be the end of this volume. And in 2018, I was involved in a conference in the Czech Republic looking at the devil and Western esotericism. And it was at the university in Brno. I'm probably not pronouncing that correct. Brno, B-R-N-O. With some very, influential historians and scholars of academia in esoteric matters. And I offered a paper on, I coined a new discipline, which I first presented in 2014 at the University of Oxford in London, which I call comparative diabology. And comparative diabology means the scientific study of devil ideas and images in all different philosophies and religions. Like, what do you say the devil is if you're a Scientologist? What do you say the devil is if you're a Roman Catholic? What is the devil if you're a Yazidi or a Zoroastrian or a Sufi? There are shades of all this stuff. And the point, I gave a talk, which I've just found, it was on back in 2019, in fact, when I spoke about all this. And I didn't go to Brno in person. I gave the talk in absentia because I had a student come from America and we had lots of work to do together. But listening to it, like this.